Day 2 of Green Bay Packers training camp was today, and it was an interesting one to say the least. It was heavy rain pretty much all of practice. It did clear up a little bit at the end for the last 30 minutes, but it was quite literally a monsoon out there. So I usually do 2 videos reacting to highlights as well as a practice recap. But since it was pouring rain so much at the beginning of practice, there's not a ton of highlights to really go over. So I'm actually going to join both of these videos together. So I'm going to go over all the highlights I have, react to, break down to them, as well as go over the key takeaways and notes from today's practice. And guys, the defense just continues to dominate in the absence of Jordan Love. Quickly go down and click that subscribe button if you do happen to be a new viewer here. You will find everything Green Bay Packers this training camp right here on this channel. Every single day the Packers practice, you will see content updates, including highlights and recaps right here on this channel. If that does interest you, definitely go down and click subscribe. So I wasn't lying when I said it was pretty much a monsoon to start practice today, as you see in this clip. I mean, it's not just raining, it's heavy rain. It's, again, a downpour at today's practice, and surprisingly they didn't move it into the Don Hutson Center because there was no lightning. So when there's no lightning, they're just going to keep the practice outside in the rain. I guess it's good practice for, you know, the handling of snaps, kicking, which Anders Carlson kicked well today, which we'll get into, but yeah. Heavy rain today. And even through the rain, Jordan Love was still present at practice. We saw yesterday he was out there on the field, as we see him here walking onto the practice field. Next to him is Katana Ladapo with that awesome yellow hair. And then even in the heavy rain, Jordan Love still out there in the dead middle of the field talking to coaches, watching practice. So when people say Jordan Love is holding out, I personally don't agree. Sure, he's not practicing because they're waiting on this contract extension, which will happen soon, but show me another player around the league that's holding out for a contract, that's out there in a monsoon like this, just watching practice, you know, being a part of the team still. You won't find one. So as much as people want to complain about Jordan Love and why isn't he practicing, it makes sense. Let this contract extension get done. It's going to happen soon. I highly doubt the Packers are going to practice much in pads without Jordan Love. I expect this deal to be done by week's end. And speaking of quarterbacks, the Packers have signed another quarterback to help with practice in the absence of Jordan Love, and that is Jacob Eason that you see here in this clip rocking the number 7. The Packers had Jacob Eason in for a tryout back in May for the first portion of practices. They ended up not signing him, but now he's on the roster, and they have released Peter Bowden for this roster move, which shocked me a little bit. Like, is he really worse than Matt Orzech, or has Matt Orzech gotten better? At the end of the day, I just want the Packers to have a good long snapper, and if Matt Orzech can turn it around and be a good long snapper, I'm fine with that, but that does shock me that Peter Bowden was released the second day into camp. I thought that would be more of a battle throughout training camp. But back to the quarterback, you know, it makes sense to add a third one here, or a fourth one, should I say, but third without Jordan Love. I believe yesterday Matt LaFleur said they'd have Sean Mannion throw a little bit, who's a coach now, but makes more sense to bring in an actual quarterback to help with practice, and that is Jacob Eason. I would assume when Jordan Love signs the extension and is back, the Packers will probably end up releasing Jacob Eason and then bringing in another player. Here's a quick clip of the defensive backs working on a strip drill while it's also raining, so, you know, if you're playing in a game like this where it's raining, you can probably knock the football away from some offensive players. So really cool to see the defenders here working on this. You see Xavier McKinney on the right with Javon Bullard, and then you see Evan Williams with Gilbert on the left there. So in terms of some of the practice notes, Matt LaFleur in his pre-practice press conference said he doesn't expect running back Marshawn Lloyd to be out too long with his hip injury, but quote, I wouldn't anticipate him today or tomorrow. And this was before practice. We didn't see him today, so we probably also won't see him tomorrow. He also mentioned A.J. Dillon is in some of the best shape he's seen, hands down, and that was apparent today on a play. A.J. Dillon broke off a big run, and he looks more explosive than ever. Also, there's an update on Jair Alexander. Apparently, he left practice yesterday. I didn't know this at the time of recording my video, but LaFleur said it's all fine. He was simply just overheating, and he returned to practice today, so no injury there. Another roster update is the Packers restructured guard Royce Newman's contract. I think he had like a $3.3 million cap hit against the salary cap, and there's no way he was going to remain on the roster under that amount. There still is a chance he doesn't make the 53-man roster, there's really no guarantees. He took a pay cut. They also restructured it, so there's still the same savings if the Packers end up cutting Royce Newman, or should I say they won't lose any money if they end up cutting Royce Newman by the end of training camp or before, so that very well could happen. This pay cut / restructure doesn't guarantee his spot on the 53. Quickly going over some of these starting notes on the offense and defense. On the offensive line, it was the same as yesterday, but through walkthroughs, we saw Zach Tom lining up at right tackle, so maybe a little bit of an indication that the Packers will keep him there, but it was Rasheed Walker left tackle, Elton Jenkins left guard, Josh Myers at center, and Sean Ryan at right guard, but they really started to rotate in Jordan Morgan at right guard, kind of swapping in and out with Sean Ryan a lot today. As for the defense, some of the starting notes, Eric Stokes remains at cornerback number 2 with Jair Alexander, and they did a switch up at safety today. So still Xavier McKinney, of course. Yesterday we saw Javon Bullard starting next to Xavier McKinney. Through all OTAs and minicamp, it was Anthony Johnson Jr., and today it was Evan Williams. So the Packers really rotating these guys around. Of course, this is a brand new safety room outside of Anthony Johnson Jr., so they're getting these guys a ton of snaps in this new Jeff Hafley defense. And Evan Williams had a nice practice today, had an interception on Sean Clifford. And moving on to the offensive notes and talking about Sean Clifford, yesterday it was a pretty solid practice from Sean Clifford, who was filling in for quarterback number 1. Today was the complete opposite. It was not a good practice for Sean Clifford, kind of showcasing what we saw in OTAs, throwing multiple interceptions today, also fumbling the football. And overall, the offense just had nothing going for them today. The defense was flying around, creating pressure, getting sacks, stopping runs. The defense won yesterday's practice, and they definitely won today's practice. We'll see if this remains when Jordan Love returns, but so far, this defense has a complete new vibe to it. The aggressiveness, the energy. I mean, we have Rashawn Gary just pretty much mocking offensive linemen out there pre-play and then still going and getting a sack on the quarterback versus Andre Dillard, who has just had an awful camp so far. So, kind of a shock that the Packers, are still sticking by Andre Dillard. Yes, there's no pads on, and it's hard to block without pads, but man, what did you really expect from a guy who had given up the most amount of sacks in the entire NFL for all tackles last year with 12 in Andre Dillard? When the offense did move the ball a tiny bit, it was to Tay Wicks. That's been Clifford's go-to target, and Tay Wicks has had 2 straight days of good practices. During the heavy rain, there's also some drops from Christian Watson, and then also 2 straight fumble exchanges from backup center Jacob Monk. But again, this was during the heavy portion of rain, so take that as you will. As I stated, Sean Clifford with a rough day of practice, threw 2 interceptions, one to Evan Williams, as I stated, and also another one to Anthony Johnson Jr., and had a fumble. So really, really rough day for the offense, and I'm not too worried because it's, Sean Clifford at quarterback kind of thrown into the fire against this new aggressive style type of defense. Now, if Jordan Love comes back and the offense can't even move the ball, then we'll have a little bit of worry, but the pads aren't on yet. Once the pads come on, you can kind of gauge this offensive versus defensive in terms of the trenches a little bit better, because without the pads on, you can't really gauge that too well. But if you're just looking at it from an outside perspective with no pads, the defense is definitely winning. And some of those defensive notes include Enigbare with 3 sacks today, Rashawn Gary with 3 sacks. It was actually 3 sacks in 4 plays. The dude was just flying around. He brought the energy today, and he was pretty much beating everyone, as he has been all offseason. Jonathan Ford also had a sack. He's looked better this season. Van Ness, another good practice. He had a good practice yesterday. Had a good practice today. He's been very impressive here in year 2 and also got some reps inside. Obviously, switching to this 4-3 kind of fits what Van Ness ran at Iowa a little bit more, where he can kind of slide inside for, say, pass rush downs and whatnot, and he has the versatility to do so, so it's cool to see the Packers experimenting with that. Overall, the defensive line has just been insane. They've been getting so much pressure through 2 days of training camp, and in terms of coverage, Carrington Valentine had a great coverage play on Romeo Doubs on a deep ball. He's obviously fighting for a starting spot over Eric Stokes, but it is Eric Stokes' job to lose. Valentine had 2 pass breakups today, and then Edgerrin Cooper had a nice day of practice, had 2 nice plays, 2 notable plays that were very noticeable. A diving pass breakup over the middle on a middle pass, and also flew into the backfield, really explosive on a running back dump off pass, just still showcasing his explosiveness. When this guy can read and react and explode on a play, he gets there very, very quick. We saw that in his tape from Texas A&M. When he's there and he's on it and his mental is completely in tune with what the play is, he is there every time he's around the ball. So in summary, the defense just flying around today, more so than yesterday. The defense also won yesterday's practice, but definitely won today. And they're getting the better of a Sean Clifford-led offense. Then to wrap things up, going over special teams real quick, Anders Carlson finished 6 for 6 on the day, and that was during a rainy practice. He was really good in OTAs and minicamp, and he continues that here in training camp. I keep saying it, don't give up on Anders Carlson. I think he will be the Packers kicker in week 1. And Greg Joseph also, with a pretty decent day kicking, went 5 for 6. So that does it for Green Bay Packers training camp day 2. As I said, I usually do 2 videos, but it seemed kind of pointless with the lack of highlights we had from today because a lot of the media couldn't even have their phones out. It was raining that hard, so they couldn't really get any clips from the warm-ups. And of course, you can't record during 11v11s. Padded practice starts later this week, and that's where we're really going to see things start to ramp up. Plus, we also might have Jordan Love back, so be on the lookout for all that. But again, just wanted to join this into one video to kind of make it easier on you guys to get all the updates from today's practice as well as see some highlights. But I appreciate you guys coming by to the video. I'll catch you on the next one, and as always, go Pack Go.